Should hold that for at least 5 minutes. 10. I mean, sometimes I've gone as much as 30 minutes if I was chasing a leak for a while. I mean, not everything you see on the channel is everything we do. There's a lot of stuff just due to time constraints I can't record, but this is one I had a little bit of time on, and I know you guys like watching the dog stuff. Okay, well, let's go ahead and wait, and if it's good to go, then we'll do the vacuum. Alright, it's been 30 minutes. She's held pressure, so we're ready to go to the next phase, which is basically vacuum bleed it. So with that, you need a compressor and the tool. I'll show you the tool. I did get this kit off of Amazon. But basically, this is the feeder. Run with this hose, suction, and then basically from there's that hose I hook up to the radiator cap fill, and other than that, open it up, suck it down. It goes by real quick. Now what I've been doing is pre-mixing the coolant and then sticking it into a clean bucket and pulling from a clean bucket, because I've noticed if I try to fill like a 1 gallon container, I put air bubbles in. The whole point of the vacuum bleed is no air bubbles. So let me go ahead and do that now. I've already done videos on mixing coolant. The stuff you do want to use if you pulled pink out, this is what you need to buy. MS 9769, and you need to mix it with distilled water. Do not use tap water. I've had people argue with me, and with this type of coolant, you put tap water into it that has mineral that has not been distilled, your coolant coming out will not look like coolant coming out. It'll gum up on you if you try to do anything but what I'm about to show you. So let me get set up for that, and I will see you in 3 seconds. Okay, here we go. Okay. Yeah, you don't want to go more than that. I've actually never seen this kit ever pull that much down. As you can see, our hoses are sucked in. Not the heater hoses so much. Okay, now we're going to open this valve. I'm going to keep it kind of keyed. Alright, no bubbles. And then all we got to do is just keep an eye on this. Now there's about 4.5 gallons in there, so we'll see how much this thing's going to take to actually fill. Yeah, that was a good pull. Yeah, you don't want to leave it under vacuum for very long. Yeah, this part can take a few minutes. Yeah, I keep it about half throttled so it keeps vacuum on it pretty heavy. And so far this has worked pretty good for me. You might do things a little different, and that's fine. Okay, we're at about 1/4 of the way filled. Yeah, especially on the Pentastar engines, the 3.6, you better be vacuum bleeding it, because you'll never get that engine bled doing it the old-fashioned way. Yeah, once it starts to get full, the last part of it goes by real slow. Once you get to about -5, I almost have to crack this fully, and there's just a point she won't suck in any more coolant. But as long as I can get it in the core, I can get the first round bleed done. You know, don't think you're just going to fill this thing and top it off and run down the road. I've seen so many people do that, and then they end up locking their engine up because they overheat it, and they don't understand why. Because you failed to bleed it. It's like a brake system. You got air in the brakes, they're going to be spongy. You got air in this system, it won't pump. It's that simple. You can actually hear the coolant dropping on top of it, so it's about 3/4 full right now. And we've emptied about half a bucket so far. The rest I'll just pour back in the containers and label it mixed. Kevin got a little lazy and didn't put mix on his bottles. Well, things I taught that boy. I guess one question I should answer now. Should you vacuum it, bleed it twice? No. What will happen if you try to vacuum this twice with coolant in there? It'll actually suck coolant out and start blowing it out there. So once and done kind of thing, unless you pour it out and start completely over. I would say we've got about 2.5 gallons through it. And you can tell you still have a pretty good suction because that hose will still be collapsed. Yeah, if you do a lot with antifreeze coolant jobs, you need to have this tool. I'm not saying necessarily buy the Amazon kit, but you know, for 200 bucks, it's not a bad kit. It's got almost every radiator cap known to man. I've had one or two though on the Ford stuff. I don't have the ones for the Ford, so I could buy the adapter if it goes on there to the Ford cap, but it's about half, so there's 2.5 gallons in it. And just let it stay under throttle. Just one of those things you just hurry up and wait. Start cracking it just a little bit more, but not enough to open at full throttle yet. What will happen is once she's taken enough in, or as much as she's going to take in, you'll see a bubble develop, and then it'll get to here, and then it'll stop, and then it'll just drip out. See if we can get that on camera. You start seeing little bubbles develop right about here when she's had enough. Still pulling. You see our hoses are finally not collapsed. Oh, there go the bubbles. Alright, at that point, she's full. Let's open it up all the way. Okay, that's all she's going to take. Okay, so let me get this disconnected and I'll show you the next step. Okay, I got scan tool plugged in. Just making sure my temperatures read as they should. Outside temp's going to read a little higher because that's not in the same sensor. So coolant temp 73, which is correct because I have been running my pellet stove all day. Okay, we're going to check, make sure nothing's in our way before we start it. And yes, I am running it without the fan because it condenses the coolant and it takes longer to bleed. So I think right at 200 degrees, if I don't have any heat coming out of the core yet, I'll shut it off, put the fan on, and start it back up. And let's see if our noise went away. Because it should, because clearly that water pump was done. Well, it didn't suck much down. Sounds good. Still got a little air in there for bubbling up that backflow a little bit. Checking the heater hoses for heat. Okay. Oh, we're going to knock that off right now. That's kind of odd, she bubbled up that quick. See, coolant's already at 68. One reason why I don't have the fan, I'm not trying to condense the coolant. I need it to get hot so it actually bleeds. Okay, I got a little bit of heat coming in this hose. That one's coming back cold. So I can tell you for a fact, this is definitely your hot side. Yeah, you don't want to see this one cold and this one hot. But it's got to move coolant all the way up there and all the way back. Alright, 86, climbing. See if we got any heat in the core yet. Just gotta put it on vent. All the way to hot. AC off because I don't want a load on this. Still pretty cold. I think she's still got a bubble. 93. Should already have heat at the core, but we don't. And you'll see that coolant bubble is going to come in here and rise, and then once it cools down, it'll suck it down, and that should be it for that. Yeah, this hose should be screaming hot. Yeah, we should have at least 70-degree air coming out. I don't think we do. Nope, she's still cold. Let's give her a little rev. Yeah, he was telling me he was having a vent issue. Okay, I've got a little bit of heat. It's not great. $114. Okay, we're finally getting a little bit of heat on the return. I mean, there should only be like a 10-degree difference between this hose and this hose. Yeah, these engines, even with vacuum bleeding, and sometimes you'll run into this issue. $116. She's airlocked. Heat's getting a little better. So when you rev it, you should feel instant heat here, at least a couple seconds after. Yeah, the first time I worked on this truck, she vacuum bled on me pretty hard. Okay, so both of these hoses are getting warm. It's still not great. That still should be hotter. Heater core should always be the first thing that gets heat. And if you squeeze this hose and you squeeze into it, I mean, I could feel air pressure in here, not liquid. Last time I had to run this thing up about 217 to finally get it to bleed out. Okay, 131. Just a dance of checking it. Okay, you just want to keep the heat on low. It's going to move those bubbles out to the radiator. Pressure cap going to vent them. Okay, 156. And you see it's not climbing real fast, so I mean we do have a good amount of coolant in there for even having a little bit of bubble. I know the strange thing with this truck, coolant temp on this gauge won't read below, I want to say it was 104. It won't tell you, like if it's really cold out, it won't tell you anything besides below 93 or 104. I think it's 104. I mean, those hoses are hot, coming back at about almost the same temperature, which is good. So you got a plugged heater core. This one right here is going to come back cold. This one here comes back cold if your heater core is plugged. So if they're both hot coming in and out, you got no heat on the inside, you got another problem. You should start feeling pressure in this hose pretty quick. Okay, 165. And it should take a while to warm up. The reason why they don't want you letting these things warming up on their own is it just takes a long time. Yeah, now the gauge is starting to do something. It's a slow reading gauge. Alternator's charging good. Yeah, these Hemis do not like to be idled. It's a bad thing for them. They really don't have a choice. Can't just go drive this thing after a service like this and go ham on it. Too many problems with that. Okay, so the upper hose is a little bit warm. No matter what the temp says, the sensor says, the thermatics that are in a thermostat, that thing can open before that does. Because coolant, by its very nature, holds a different kind of heat. So you heard it dip there for a second. It was testing something in the system. My guess would be evap, and it looks for a momentary dip to make sure evap's working. We don't have EGR, so it's not an EGR dip. Or it finally switched over to closed loop, but I thought it would have done that with being a heated O2 system. Slow to warm up. Alright, let's go check that gauge. Okay, gauge works. Heater's slowly getting hot. We're seeing that temperature rise to 176 just revving it, so now it's just climbing a little faster than it should be, so I keep an eye on that. 180. Yeah, so I got hot coolant to about here, and then it stops right here. Nothing like the smell of new parts breaking in. We can actually see when the thermostat opens, because what will happen is the temperature will go up and then it will just dump. Yeah, you should have heat pretty much instantly if this thing is on vapor lock. Okay, see how that temperature goes up right away? And let's see if it falls. We got pressure, but we don't have heat yet. A lot of coolant to go through to get warm. I think we put almost 3.5 gallons in it so far. I mean, the one thing you don't want to feel, you don't want to feel this be squishy. You want it pretty well rock hard. 183. I'm gonna have to rev it. Heater's nice and warm. Oh. Now you see it falling like that, the thermostat's trying to open and letting a little bit of cold coolant cycle through. Yeah, I've already lost 2 degrees there. That's why I didn't want to have the fan hooked up, so I didn't want this thing taking longer to heat up than it really should. Still cold. Oh, I can feel air bubbles. Lots and lots of air bubbles. Not uncommon to have air bubbles right after you do a major service like this. Okay, thermostat just opened. Radiator's hot. How far did she drop down? 185. Okay, now at this point we should start seeing it climb the operating temp. So that's what temperature we were running with the 192 thermostat, was 186. It's a little cold for it. Okay, radiator's hot, like I needed. Now without having that fan clutch on, I'm not condensing coolant. Now I gotta turn the AC on and see if I can't get the electric fan on. I don't know if I have enough head pressure to do this. Okay, it's running. Okay, that's getting hot. There we go. Kind of hoping the electric fan will kick on. Never plugged in. getting hot, but we're probably not reached the head pressure yet to kick that fan over. And thermostat just opened again. There we go. Now you should feel hot air coming out of here. And we should see this temperature drop if the thermostat's not holding it back. Thermostat's holding it back. I mean, it is a 203 thermostat, so there we go. You might see it come down just a little bit more, but at this point thermostat's probably shut. This is what burns up these thermostats, is constant open and close, open and close. Let's see if that fan cycles one more time. For that fan to kick, a couple things have to be met. Operating temperature, normally above 136 degrees. Head pressure has to be met to kick it on to cool the high pressure side down. Without the fan clutch on, this thing should be just cycling coolant. I feel the hose, you can feel the hose get hot and kind of cool, hot, kind of cool, hot, kind of cool. You can feel definitely a lot of hot air, so rejecting heat. Yeah, now it's getting cool, and that's because the thermostat shut and we're not flowing coolant. I haven't seen it get above 194 yet. As I was saying earlier in the video, you know, thermostats are based upon an average. You know, 203, so the high of 205, a low of 197. Yeah, and these radiators are new. They're so efficient that that thermostat takes a beating. I mean, this thing's rejecting heat just being here in the cold. You see, we raised the coolant level pretty high. When they come back after it's cooled off, it'll be down to here. Yeah, I would like to see this radiator cap hot, but the last bit of the bubble's here until we go through a cooling cycle. Yeah, that air should be hot coming out. That thermostat's open, she's moving coolant, you're rejecting heat. When you're on front wheel drive systems, you see this number come down pretty quick. Alright, we're at a stage where I'm going to let it cool off on a full cooling cycle, and other than that, we're just about done. I'm going to put the fan clutch back in the second time around, and that's pretty much going to be a wrap on that one. But we'll start it up with the fan clutch and give it a final, it's out of here because it's done. Alright. Alright, I've let this thing sit for a couple hours. And how you know you've got it just about there, just see where my line is and see where it's already drawn it down. Another way you can tell is if you squeeze the upper hose, you should hear this. Still a little bit of air in it, but there's a point you can only bleed it so far without driving it. We're just about there. So I'm going to put the fan clutch back in, start it up, make sure that's working right. And other than that, this job's about done.